gotta leave your money behind you. Raise your hand to the sky. Ask the masses for silence.
Welcome back to Give Me Some Truth. Mitch and I are in the booth today. We're going to be talking about I guess it's fair to call it a hot topic, if you will.
I would say so.
For at least all of 2023. The idea of interest rates and the world that we're in now compared to what the world looked like. I mean, 12 months ago is still kind of similar to where we're at today, but go back 18 months, 24 months, and the world was completely different than where it is today. And I think what's interesting, Mitch, is that most people understand that it's different, but I don't know that that's equated out to change in behavior kind of across their entire financial landscape, if you will.
There's new decisions to be made, it feels like, because there's options
Right.
that are on the table now
Right.
that are affecting people in a way that, like you said, just even 24 months ago, weren't even remotely close.
Right.
And that can be on, and we'll get into this, but it affects a lot of really everyday things, you know, as far as short-term savings in the bank. It affects
Right.
what people are shopping around, you know, for that next home and so many things, right? We all know that, but now there's some big time decisions potentially that can be made that are impactful in this kind of, I'll say, new rate environment.
Yeah. So these won't be exact periods of time, but we'll just kind of draw some lines just so that it makes it easier for people in a more of an illustrative way. So if we go back to, call it January of 2022, right? And so we kind of call that the line in the sand in terms of where things started to kind of change, right? That's not exactly where it was, but let's just say that in terms of conversation's sake. So pre that period of time, going back probably at least 12, 14 years, the rate environment has been relatively similar.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of drawing that line right back to like 08, 09 really is kind of what you're drawing it back to.
Yep.
And then kind of where it sat for call it a decade, or call it a dozen years, right? Yep. And then the last 2 years.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because even in like 2018, there was a little attempt, right, at interest rates increasing. They did. The Fed did increase rates, but it doesn't really have what seems like the kind of a lasting impact. It was such a blip. If you're looking at the last 10 years and what, interest rates rose for a little bit, and then they had to pull back and cut them almost immediately because of the kind of the freak out of the market and taper tantrum and everything. So in any event, there's one little blip in there, as far as kind of the recent memory in the last, well, that's 6-7 years now, but we are at a point now where we don't believe that we're going to just go back to this ultra near zero rates anymore. And we're not saying it might not reduce, right? But I think what we're trying to get at because of that is what are some decisions that can be made now given this new environment?
Yeah, and I'm curious now because I'm looking back at some historical information, and I think one of the good measurements for this for people that don't do this every day is the 10-year treasury, right? So if we talk about the 10-year treasury, and essentially what we mean by that is simply the interest rate that we are going to earn on a 10-year government bond, right? So U.S. government bond, and the 10-year treasury is important in a lot of ways because it acts as the benchmark for mortgage rates. It acts for the benchmark in comparisons, right? So there's a lot of comparisons that get done between like the 2-year versus the 10-year, the 5-year versus the 10-year, and kind of what that means historically speaking. And when we look at the 10-year, where we're at this morning, and as of right now, end of September here in 2023, we're sitting at about a little over 4.6% yield on the 10-year treasury. Not that long ago that we were down in the 1s and 2s.
No, not long at all. And we're still in this environment where the curve is inverted, and it's flattening. And what I mean by that when I say inverted versus what we'd call a normal curve typically is, hey, for shorter maturing treasuries, historically you'd get paid a little less, and then the longer maturing treasuries you get paid a little more. And we're in this period now where you're still getting rewarded to have some short-term treasuries, but that's changing. And kind of like Nate was saying, if we're at 4, 6 and some change as of this recording on the 10-year, it's flattening a little bit, right? So it's not this phase now where it doesn't make any sense to, and this wasn't all that long ago, where it made sense to definitely be short on the curve because that curve was so inverted. And, there's some opportunities out there as well now.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we were in the, again, 1% to 2% yield range on the 10-year treasury, and now we're at 4.6. And again, for a lot of people that don't do this every day, that's not something that seems all that dramatic. But when you think about it in a kind of multiplier sense, right? All of a sudden, this gets you understand the impact of it, right? So 1% to 2% is what? 100% change, right? So then you look at it and you go 1% to 4%. Now you start to understand what we're talking about. So even though 1% to 4% doesn't seem like that big of a change, you're talking about, multiples. You're not just talking about up 10 or up 20% or up 30%. You're talking about hundreds of percent that it's up, 2 times, 3 times, and what effect that has on depository rates. So talk about that a little bit. You and I were talking about that before we started recording, just kind of what that means.
For sure. So we all have some money in the bank, I'll say, right? And everyone is a little bit different on how much they have in checking, how much they have in savings. And for a really long time, everyone just got, and really long time, meaning the last decade plus, right? 12 years or so. And everyone kind of got used to just not getting anything on their cash in the bank. You still need checking. You still want savings for emergency fund, but then you're getting 0.01%, let's say.
Yep.
Right.
0.0 nothing, as we like to say.
Exactly. And it's a little delayed. It's not like the Fed just raises interest rates and all of a sudden your savings, boom, you're getting some more interest on it. But now all of a sudden people are realizing, hey, wait a minute, I can get 4+% in a high yield savings and it's still pretty liquid and I can transfer to my checking when I need it and all those things. I've seen 4.5%, for example, 4.5 that is. I don't know if I've seen 5% straight up on a savings account, but that's meaningful, right? If you have tens of thousands of dollars, let's say, sitting in a savings account, do you want it in that 0.0 nothing? Did you call it 0.0 nothing or 0.0 nothing?
0.0 nothing.
0.0 nothing. I sure don't. I want a little something, right? And I still get the liquidity and it still serves a purpose for emergency fund and all that. And they're a little bit different, but as far as deposits, right, we're also talking CDs because people are asking about CDs right now. A very common question people say is, hey, I got an email from my bank. They're offering this CD rate. Sounds pretty good. What do you think? Right? And that's a pretty common question, not only to me, but for all the other advisors, here at our firm. They've all had that conversation with clients because all of a sudden they see, oh, this is a 5% CD. That sounds pretty shiny compared to what I used to have.
Well, and I think it gets into the category of what Clint and I like to say when we talk to clients is we're getting into the category of, quote, real money, right? In other words, I think when you talk about difference in yields and what you can get in your savings and just take a round number to make the math simple for everybody. So say $100,000, and not everybody has $100,000 of cash, right? But again, for illustrative purposes, right? Okay, so if you're talking about difference in interest rates before the rates started moving up, and it was okay, over here I can earn $100 in a year, and over here I can earn $150 in a year. Well, an extra $50 of interest in a year on $100,000, most people don't consider that real money. Now we're in the category of real money because now if we're getting 0.0 nothing on our $100,000, right, and let's say 0.0 nothing ends up being $200 of interest, right, versus it sits in this other account over here, and we can get $4,500 a month, or excuse me, a year in interest. That's
if you're getting that a month,
right,
what bank? Where are you banking?
Right,
at?
exactly.
Holy cow!
Yeah, I know a guy. So that's real money, right? I mean, you're talking about just it sits here versus it sits here, and over here I get $200, and over here I get $4,500. That's real money, and I think what we're trying to call out in this podcast today is we're now in a rate environment, and this is the call to action that we're hoping that people kind of take us up on is take a look at what you're earning on your cash, because even $10,000. Okay, so moved from 10, $100,000 to 10,000. She's talking about $450 of interest in a year just for it sitting here versus there. Why not, right?
Worth considering.
It's very much worth considering. And so I think that's...
Oh, by the way, in both scenarios, they're FDIC insured, right? Like
exactly.
This is insured money.
Right.
You're not taking any more risk on.
Right. And I think that what people are losing sight of is that maybe the assumption is that, well, because rates are up, rates have just gone up in every account. Right. So let's do an illustration here just to, and I'm not going to call out names of companies and things like that, but if we just said a local credit union, right? And this is pretty much evident in just about every bank and credit union that we know of as far as, kind of how they offer depository rates. But, one that we look at has take a savings account, which again is earning just such a paltry rate. Let me see if I can get to it quickly. Bear with me a second. Savings rate of 0.03%. Okay, so you're not even getting 0.1%. That same institution, right, in a money market. Now, again, this money market does require a $10,000 deposit, but if you're there, 3.12%.
Getting better.
That is a huge jump, massive jump. And then take it a step further and say, what if we go into one of their CD rates, one of their special CD rates, you're pushing between 4.5% and 5%.
Yeah.
I mean, that is real money. Again, $10,000 in the savings account. Check my math here on this, Mitch. That would be $3, wouldn't it? 0.03% on annually. I think that would be $3, right?
Yeah,
it's either 3 or 30. And bear with me,
right.
I
didn't realize it was me tested on
the
math
spot.
here.
I know, right?
I tried to get out of being tested.
You can say whatever you want, my friend.
I did some advanced.
You took way more
things in
calculus than I
CFP
did. Yeah,
it's been a long time since calculus.
University of Michigan can prove the fact that you took way more by way of mathematical courses than I did.
Yeah.
In your engineering studies.
It was good at the time. I don't feel the need to solve an integral problem or anything like that anymore.
Could you right now if you had to?
Basic. I could do basic. I could probably do some Calc 1 right now.
You could do Calc 1 right now?
No, basic. Like I'm talking week 1 of Calc 1.
Week 1 of Calc 1.
Maybe week 3. Yeah.
If we pulled down a Calc 1 exam right now, college level Calc 1 exam, can you get better than 70% on that? No.
Because that includes the whole semester. I'm talking like in the first couple weeks of Calc. I could probably pick that up, get by for a little bit. Like kind of like I pretend like I know what's going on.
Yeah, right. So if we gave you like the kind of the first exam from that class, like today with no prep, no study, no nothing, just gave it to you right here, could you get half of the answers right?
So I doubt it. And I'm going to just put myself out there on this one. So I did Calc 1 while in high school, AP, right? So I got credit for that. So then I jumped right into Calc 2.
Overachiever, obviously.
In college, but I took a year off.
Always
that was a mistake.
Always a mistake.
That was a mistake because my school didn't offer Calc 2 through AP. So it's like, I didn't know what to do. So I took stats instead.
Right.
I would never do that again. And then the guidance counselor on campus was like, college Calc's a little different. Calc 2 is kind of hard. Like, you should reconsider Calc 1. I'm like, I have credit. I'm not going to pay for something again that I already had credit for.
Oof. How'd that work out?
I think my first Calc exam midterm was a 44, but there was on a curve. This is on a curve. Okay. So I think by the time they put it on a curve, I definitely passed. I mean, I was nowhere near failing.
Yep.
But yeah, it was an okay score when it was all said and done. Yep. But yeah, 44 out of 100, that was just a blow to the confidence. Turns out college is
a little different.
A little different than high school.
A little different. Big time.
So could I solve maybe, a couple of derivative problems? Yeah, maybe. Sure.
Probably, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, sidetracked. What seems to happen CDs. When I get on the podcast? It seems to go sideways more times than not.
Speaking of distracting, there was a guy, for those that are listening, they can't see this, but there's a guy basically washing our windows behind us, like 5 minutes ago, and I tried to pretend like I didn't notice it.
What people didn't see was that Amber was going above and beyond and went busting out of
Did you kick him out?
Yeah, she did. She went busting out of here. Yeah, you didn't see it. And went around there and was like, nope, not right now. And she did.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So apparently I was so distracted by the window washing itself. I knew you left. I thought you just had to attend to something, but
She did attend to something, and there you go.
Well, yeah.
And now you don't get to see the exciting window washer.
Wow.
All right, back to it.
That confidence.
All right, so $10,000. We've figured that it's either $30 or $3. I think it's $3 if we're doing our collective math correctly.
Yep.
That same $10,000 in this CD is yielding you on an annual basis somewhere in the neighborhood of $450 to $500. So again, when we talk about
real money,
where money is sitting, exactly, if it's just going to sit somewhere, why not have it sit here versus here? However, the key point to all of this is you have to be the proactive one that does this. The bank's not just going to move your money for you.
They will not do it for you.
They're not just going to give you better rates on your savings. So if it just sits there, you're not going to get that benefit. So it's imperative that you either come and talk to us, talk to your bank. And by way of coming and talk to us, I mean, just you could ask us advice and say, hey, should I go over here? Should I go over there? Kind of what do you guys think? We're happy to provide that information to people.
Or like my bank is offering X percent.
Exactly.
Is this a good idea?
Exactly.
We can say, hey, sure, sounds great.
Right.
Or, maybe we have other ideas. But
right.
I mean, I've had clients, more than one. I mean, we're talking a handful of clients that literally just had to call their bank and say, hey, I more or less Googled savings rates.
Yes.
You apparently have this product that is at 4+%. Why am I only getting, 1 point whatever? And then their response is, oh yeah, we'll just press a button. We'll flip you over. Bada bing, bada boom. You're in the kind of the new product, if you will.
And
all else stays the same.
I mean, potentially just go online and do it.
Right.
In some institutions, or just move it from here to open a CD or open a money market and move it over, and there it is. And so I think that's the first thing that we're trying to get people to think about is, at a minimum, see if you can do that, right? Just be cognizant of where your money sits, and even within the institution that you work with, local bank, local credit union, nationwide bank, nationwide credit union, whatever it might be, just be cognizant of where you're at and where you could be, right? That's step one. Step two, if you want to be like Mitch, as an overachiever, is we can get into other ideas like opening an online bank relationship with an online, like a SoFi or a
I use Ally personally.
Ally Bank, Capital One 360, I think for a long time had some good rates. Not give up your personal local relationship, but just have an offshoot institution that may be able to offer something that locals cannot. So you still get the benefit of a local institution for cashing checks, or if you need a cashier's check or whatever it might be. But you also are getting this better relationship, and you're doing so with a data link between the two institutions so that you can just shift money back and forth if you need to.
Yep, exactly. And it's very easy to do, speaking from personal experience and also seeing clients go through this, right? Because a lot of clients are moving things around right now. It's not a bad time to reconsider what you're doing for your short-term banking.
The window washer's coming back.
Oh no, Amber. There he is.
Oh, here he goes. Can you see it? There he goes.
Can we somehow take a screenshot of this and then or is that like violating his privacy or something? He's kind of violating our privacy though.
Kind of, in a way.
I don't know. We will not mention who's doing that, but
exactly.
In any event, the other kind of interesting thing too, like when it comes to some of these decisions, yes, you still want cash in the bank for obvious reasons, checking, savings, emergency fund, all those things that we said too. However, there's also this camp of people with the decision of, this money that I have seems to be ballooning up. And yes, it's nice getting the 4.5%, let's say, from my high yield savings. However, I could also be using that extra money that's not earmarked towards a home remodel or any of those types of things and invest it in something shorter term, right? Whether it's shorter term bonds or things like that. And you're going to subject yourself to market risk and things like that. But this trickle down effect also affects bonds and securities that are out there publicly traded as well. So, we're talking about interest in the bank for the first 15 minutes almost of this podcast, but bonds are paying more interest, right? And then it's kind of being selective. Well, what does that look like? What are the differences between investing in a core aggregate bond fund versus just having my money continue to sit and clip that 4.5% in my high yield savings? And, and that brings a whole different slew of things to think about, right? And that's another thing that we're helping clients with is one, does it make sense to deploy any cash? And there's kind of a yes or no, point in the decision tree there. Then eventually, it very well could get to, we can actually take on a little bit more risk. Nothing like just going into the stock market necessarily, but a little more risk for a little more yield, hopefully, is the return. And there are some attractive opportunities there right now.
Well, and this is evident by the fact that for the first time in Clint and my career, which looking at the state of our hair and receding and graying and whatnot is now longer than it used to be. Our experience in this industry. Last year, middle of the year last year was the first time that we had ever bought an individual treasury for a client. Okay. And the reason why is because for, as we said earlier in the podcast, a decade, if not more, these tools just weren't attractive. They weren't valuable because it just didn't give you the return that you should have gotten for giving up liquidity and control of your money. And we're in a different spot now. We have a toolbox now that involves products that were very, very much out of favor for a decade, arguably, pushing 2 decades, right? And now they're back in favor. And so you're exactly right when it comes to working with an advisor, or if, when you come and see us, and just being aware of the fact that these products, which have always been out there, it's not that they haven't been out there, it's simply that they didn't make sense for a lot of people because the risk to liquidity, to return, to time frame equation just didn't work out where these made sense. Well, they make a lot of sense right now. And so, we'll wrap it up here by saying, being aware of what is available today that was not available or was available, but not in the attractive way that it's available today. Being aware that these options are out there, being aware that they can have a meaningful impact on your life by way of how much interest you can earn and what it can do for you. And just being also aware of the fact that these rate changes within the Fed can permeate through many different areas of our economy. They can affect mortgage rates. They can affect credit card rates. They can affect home equity loan rates. They can affect auto loan rates. So when you have
questions, we've seen all of those,
right? And to a pretty, how do I say, almost powerful effect, right? So it's a different world than it was 2 years ago. And so when you're making these decisions, please reach out to us and ask us questions, because just rolling into a car dealership and getting 0.9% doesn't happen anymore. Just, hey, we want to put a deck on the back of the house. Let's just grab a HELOC and pay 3% on it. That's not the world anymore. And so these decisions require a little bit more by way of thought and planning than they did, again, up to 18, 24 months ago.
Yeah. It's a conversation we're having all the time right now. And if this is something that remotely might affect you and your decision process with whatever it is, right? On the financing side or the short-term cash, and hey, I can actually get something for my short-term cash now, feel free to reach out to us. We're having a conversation a lot, and we're happy to have it again if that's something that you think you could benefit from.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us again for Give Me Some Truth. I've got a big thumbs up from Amber and some additional sign language. I'm pretty sure she's saying smash the like button.
Oh, see, now Stan's going to be mad now because now you've stolen his line of smash the like. Now, again, I mean, it's not his line. This has been uttered by...
I think I heard someone say poke the like button, but that's a little weird. It reminds me of like early Facebook.
Yep.
And I can't remember where I saw that, but that's like, it's kind of like creepy early Facebook vibes.
I'm going to just say, if you're interested, press the like button.
How
does that sound?
Press it.
Exactly.
Just press it and then tell your friends. Subscribe.
Because, and we say that we joke, but in all seriousness, we've been doing the podcast for quite a while now. And I think we're almost pushing a decade for as long as we've done the podcast. Yeah. And it has meaningful reach for people now. And so the more you do that, the more it helps us. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much for listening, and we will be back soon with another episode of Give Me Some Truth.
Wachter Condon Financial Advisors is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Registration with the SEC does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The opinions expressed by the participants of this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Wachter Condon Financial Advisors. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. Thanks for listening, and for further information, please visit WalknerCondon.com.